Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pandas and Prose. We will get started here shortly. Just waiting for a few of you to join in from the waiting room. Hello, welcome to Pandas and Prose. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking a moment out of your day to be with us here today. My name is Jenna Bonello on the Media and External Affairs team at World Wildlife Fund. And before we officially begin, I just wanted to give a special shout out to our WWF supporters and heroes who are on this call. Our work is not possible without your support, so just thank you so much for everything that you do for us. And now for a few logistics. This is a Zoom webinar, and so all participant cameras have been turned off and your audio is on mute. But please ask questions throughout via the chat. We really love audience participation and engagement. And this event is being recorded to be posted to World Wildlife Fund's YouTube page after our live recording today. All right, so who do we have on our show? Today we are joined by Bailey Moritz, WWF's lead specialist for seaweed and shellfish farming. That should be the new tongue twister. I love that. And we're, of course, beyond thrilled to have Mathew Bate here with us today to talk about With a Little Kelp from Our Friends, this beautiful book that tracks the eco-social history of seaweed and its role in ocean agriculture within the context of climate change. And I just have to say personally, it is such a beautiful book, as you can see, with really remarkable information, an index for kids to learn more, all the words that are associated with seaweed, and fun illustrations. So please pick up your copy if you haven't already. And today's episode is also special because we're joined by two additional panelists. So we have Kristel Anuszewski, who is a teacher who specializes in library and library skills and STEM to kindergarten through 8th grade students at Windsor School in Maine. Oh my gosh, such an important age group to reach with this important work. And Maya Pelletier is the Special Projects Assistant in Aquaculture Education and Communications at the Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center. So thank you again to all of you for joining us here today. I'm so excited for this conversation. And without further ado, Bailey, over to you.
Thanks, Jenna. And again, thanks so much, Matt and Kristel and Maya, for being here with us. We're really honored to have you all on board for Panda and Prose. So before we dig into the deeper content, I just wanted to start us off, get things going by asking where we all are in the world today and something that's been keeping you busy this summer. And I can say for myself, I'm based in Seattle, Washington. And I've been cooking a lot of Korean recipes, actually, recently, inspired by a trip I did to Korea to see the seaweed industry over there. Kristel, how about we go to you?
Sure. I'm in Winthrop, Maine, which is just outside of Augusta. And this summer, I was recently awarded the Kennebec County Teacher of the Year. And so I've been doing a lot of professional development around the Teacher of the Year program. And I've also been able to play quite a bit of golf. I wish that my handicap score would reflect all of the practice I've been doing, but it's a game for those who are patient. So I'm waiting patiently for that to happen.
That's great. Thanks, Kristel. And Maya, how about you?
I am also based in Maine. I live in Portland, so just a little bit up the coast from Boston, a little bit down the coast from Acadia National Park. And this summer, I have been obviously getting out on the water as much as possible. So sailing and going to shellfish farms when I can. And I've also been doing a lot of cycling. So that's been really fun for me.
Awesome. And then Matt, how about you?
Well, I'm actually down in Australia. Obviously, with the time difference, it's about 5 in the morning. So I'm not like sitting in some bunker in the dark. It's actually pitch black outside. But I live down south in Australia in Victoria. So I'm on Taungurung country. I live like a couple of 100 k's from the ocean. So I'm not super close to the ocean, believe it or not. And it's obviously been winter, not summer. For me, but I've kind of been working with my partner on building a tiny house. Like we're just DIYing it, teaching ourselves how to build at this point. So I'm definitely have re-entered the kid mindset. I'm just learning a bunch of new skills. So that's been keeping me busy.
That's great. Yeah, we've got some good geographic spread here. And Matt, you definitely win the award for most dedication for being here so early. Thank you for that. So Matt, you wrote a book about seaweed, which is incredible. And there's not many out there, not many people who can say that. So can you talk to us about why this was important to you and what motivated you to write this book?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the book came out the early 2021, so it's been out for a few years now. I don't know. But basically, I don't know how seaweed kind of came into my life, but it grabbed me in some way. Um, I tracked into it through regenerative agriculture. I was kind of editing a magazine at the time, and became really interested in, uh, for myself as much as anything, developing ecological literacy. And that kind of then went into marine literacy, which for me was almost non-existent, really. And I didn't realize that that was more emblematic of society at large, that no one was really that marine literate. So it was a passion project for me, learning about seaweed. I was writing about it as well for the magazine. And then, I guess props go to Thames and Hudson, who published my book. They were on the lookout for people that could communicate about climate change to kids. And they were specifically looking for authors that weren't children's authors, quote unquote. So I'd never written for kids, and they were interested in me writing a reference book, and kind of treating kids with a little bit more respect than sometimes they get in children's books around complex issues. So that's basically how it happened. And yeah, I have this weird affinity, and I'm just super enamored by seaweed. I have no idea how it happened, basically.
That's incredible. And I can share for the audience. So when we came across this book at WWF, it was pretty clear to us that it could serve a role to advance our seaweed work at WWF. We have a program where we're working to see more seaweed farming because we want to see more of the benefits that it provides for coastal waters and climate and communities. And one of the ways that we're working to achieve that is through sharing stories with the public, with young people, and educating coastal communities about the importance of seaweed, so that hopefully, people will be more accepting as new farms get started in their local area. So we got our hands on this book. We first sent 100 copies to Alaska, which is an area where seaweed farming is starting to take off. We sent these books to school libraries across Alaska. And we just got such a positive response from educators that we wanted to take this to the next step. So we turned to Maine, which is currently the state leading in seaweed production in the US. And we partnered with Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center and Maya to not only send this book out to schools, but also to create a curriculum that would go alongside this book for educators to use with their students. So for us at WWF, we really see this book and the work that we've done alongside it as a chance to change hearts and minds and really inspire, the next generation of leaders who are going to be the ones to really see this industry take off and build a sustainable seaweed farming industry in the US. So I'm very grateful that we came across your work, Matt. And Maya, your work in particular has really utilized this book in so many ways. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit more about what that was like and detail on that and what came next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bailey. So as you mentioned, seaweed in Maine is really starting to grow, and it's Maine is leading the nation in seaweed farming right now, which is really exciting. And there's just so much, I think, hope in the seaweed farming sector, and that is really exciting. And we wanted to kind of be part of that mission, bringing that hope and that energy to teachers and students in the state of Maine. And so what we did is we kind of saw how beautiful Matt's book is. Highly would recommend looking at the art in the book sometime. It's really exceptional. And we read through it, and there's so much science, but there's also history, and there's economics, and there's all of these disciplines that come together. And so we started thinking about how can we turn this book into something that can be used easily by teachers in a classroom and build on this wonderful resource. So the book as a standalone is amazing, but we were thinking, well, how can we make this really about Maine? How can we bring this alive for kids? And so what we started to do was use the book as a backbone to then build out a curriculum that surrounds each of the topics. So we have a topic on ecology and evolution and on seaweed biology. And we also have one on economics and the working waterfront and empowering women on the working waterfront. And all of these different things. How do people use seaweed? You know, like all of this really interesting stuff. And then we grounded that in kind of Maine, because we're a place that's really leading in the seaweed industry. And we created a video series, and we kind of found activities that some of our partner organizations in the state had worked on, and we created a couple activities, and we ended up building out this resource that we hoped teachers would be able to use. And then once we'd had that built up, kind of along the same timeline, we started sending this book out to teachers directly. So Bailey mentioned that they had sent it to libraries, and we said, that's great, and let's build on that. And so we took that book and we got in touch with people all over the state of Maine in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And we mailed out 1,000 copies of that book directly to teachers. And it was so exciting. We had a book packing day. Our whole organization was there. We all put them in envelopes and stuff and then sent them out, supporting the United States Postal Service there a little bit. And then after we had sent that out, we included in that a link to our online curriculum, which will be sent out to anyone who's interested after this webinar. And then we kind of brought all that energy together with all of our partners that had helped us so much along the way. And we hosted a workshop in last November, actually. And that workshop was our opportunity to take all of the things that we had had so much excitement and energy around and bring them together and demonstrate them with teachers. And so we had activities, we had people making food and helping bring food into the classroom. And so that workshop was to help introduce educators to this work we'd been doing, and then we let them do what Kristel did. So I feel like that's my place to pass on.
Awesome. Thanks, Maya. Yeah. And Kristel, turning it to you. So you adopted the lesson plan from this book into your classroom. Can you tell us about why you did that, and what were some of the reactions from the students and the parents involved?
Sure. So one of my colleagues is a science teacher. Her name is Jana Dykett, and she definitely was a catalyst in terms of me as a librarian getting involved in learning more about aquaculture. And so when I received the book, I had brought it to Jana. She had been working with the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Office, in particular, Carrie Kazor. And she said, Kristel, this book is awesome. And I said, I know, let's go to this workshop. So we went to Belfast, Maine, to attend the workshop that day. And we were just really energized at that point. We knew that we wanted to work together to bring as much of this back to our students as possible. I teach the entire school. My colleague, Jana, teaches mostly 8th grade science. So we knew that we could reach the same students, and I had the potential to be able to reach the entire school, which I was able to do. At that particular conference, it was a great networking opportunity. I networked with a chef out of the Boston area. His name is Andrew Wilkinson, and he has innovated a recipe called Swedish seaweedish meatballs. That's what it is. It's a play on words a little bit. So seaweedish meatballs. And what I love about this product is it's 33% sugar kelp. So I really learned a ton myself about seaweed that day. And I brought it back with Jana, and we talked about what we were going to do. At that conference, I asked Chef Andrew if he would come to my school, which is a tiny little K-8 elementary school about 2 hours from the ocean. Many of my students haven't even been to the ocean. So it was great to be able to bring the ocean to them. And I said to my students, so we have this amazing rock star chef who works with really amazing universities across the United States, and he's got this really great product, and the kids were so excited. So we hyped it up. We also did some work around seaweed that week. The University of Maine Cooperative Extension came in and did some seaweed identification with our students. They did seaweed pressing. We shut down the whole cafeteria. We made the cafeteria kind of look like a seaweed lab that day. And then we also ended up serving the meatballs that week as well. And in anticipation, these are a few of my photos here, but in anticipation that there is Chef Andrew with one of our younger kindergarten students, and there he is there with one of our second graders. And the kids and the staff all loved the meatballs. Chef Andrew also was able to work with some of my middle schoolers, and he talked about his recipe and food science and the role that seaweed plays in his recipe and why he felt it was important to make that such a key ingredient. This was the seaweed identification that we were working on, and students were looking for just hitchhikers on seaweed as well. So they were able to see more than just the seaweed. This is a picture of one of our students who is looking at horsehair kelp, or horsetail, I guess it's called horsetail kelp. And this was an activity that I was able to do with my entire student body, K to 8. We created this underwater ocean in our hallway, and it was wonderful because students were using math to measure the plastic tablecloths that we draped along the top. And then they were the ones who cut out the sea creatures that were able to kind of be placed between the light and the tablecloths to create that shadow. These students are putting brown and green kelp in the hallway, because that, of course, was the star of the show that week, was the seaweed. So they also were able to put some red in there as well. You can see this is one of my students from last year. She was cutting out the silhouette of the sea animals that were going to be placed on the plastic. There was a ton of learning in this book. I always do a highlight book for whatever we're teaching that week, and so of course Matt's book was the star of the show for several weeks, I should say, because we were getting students hyped up about it, which is really, really awesome. So I was able to also not only teach the students, but then I also visited our superintendent and school committee in our town, and I was able to teach them about why we are incorporating seaweed into our lessons. I have to say that my superintendent at first kind of chuckled when he introduced my topic. But at the end of my presentation and the information that we now know about seaweed and its effects on our climate and our economy, and the health of our world, he wasn't laughing anymore. And he said, "Kristel, thank you so much. We've learned so much." And so it was great for the students to be able to be part of that education process. And also just to make my community, again, 2 hours away from the ocean, more aware. But this year, we are working with the Maine Solution Areas through the Department of Education to grow seaweed in our school, and then to plant it, and then have the students go out and harvest it. But understanding the role that it plays in the ocean and what the healing effects that it has for our climate is really what gets my students excited about this project.
It's just absolutely incredible, Kristel. I mean, the breadth of things that you have done with the students is awesome. And Matt, I just have to ask for you, like, how does it feel as the author of this to hear this energy from people who've taken it to different places and see where it's gone?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, also thank you for putting this on as well. I had chatted to Mayo and the team from Maine Innovation Center a little bit, like a couple of months ago. So I knew kind of what they were doing on their front, but just to hear from Kristel, like what they're kind of doing in the classrooms is unbelievable. There's like a tiny similar pilot project happening here in Australia, but it's really small. Like the seaweed industry in Australia as well essentially doesn't exist yet. So it's just wild that this is kind of happening, and it's just being used as it is. It kind of really wasn't on my radar when writing the book that it would land in classrooms like it has. But I mean, what an amazing place for a book to be, really. So it's just really exciting for me to learn about this.
Yeah, it's amazing. So my last question for the panelists is, what's one takeaway that you hope people who are here on this call today bring back with them to their homes and their communities from the book and from the project overall? And Maya, if I could start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think a really big takeaway for me is just find that thing that you get really excited about, that connects you with your community and your environment and the future, and something that brings you a lot of hope, and then find those people and the community around it and see where it can take you, because that's how I came into seaweed and the seaweed world. And the community that I've found here, from people working on writing and artists all the way to people farming seaweed to education, is just so beautiful and so empowering. And that's what I would take away from that.
How about you, Kristel?
I first want to thank Matt for writing the book. I want to also thank Maya and the Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center for really being the catalyst, because when Maya talks about passion, I am so passionate about seaweed because of the impact that it has on our ability to maybe reverse some of the damage that we've done to our environment. And as I have said many times before, seaweed just does no harm. It's amazing when you start studying it. And but I would say for educators or anyone, but for real, for educators, find those people out there, those professionals who can kind of maybe take you out of your comfort zone. I taught high school English for 27 years before getting this job as a librarian. And I feel like I say this job, but really it's become a mission, because my students are now empowered to become solutionaries, and they're the ones who are adopting the problems that that past generations have created. And my students are empowered and they're excited, and they're in third grade. And so I want to take their energy and just continue to embrace it, and it's going to explode. And they are change makers, and they do get it, and they're not too young. And I'm just really, really excited for them to feel that they can be impactful, that the world isn't just happening to them. Their world, really, they have some impact, and I love that for them. I hope that wasn't too off topic.
That's fantastic, Kristel.
I
Yeah.
get pretty passionate about it, as you can see, and I love making change makers out of our students. I really want them to feel like they understand it, that they get it. And as I said, they're going to be growing their own seaweed this year, which is so amazing. And then putting it on lines in the ocean, and then checking in on it after it is able to grow over the winter. So I'm super excited for them to feel like they are a part of the change that's needing to happen.
Can't wait to hear how that goes, how it grows.
Yeah.
And then Matt, over to you for the last word on this.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of blown away by what's happening here. I guess the big takeaway for me is like the power of community, and also just the power of people that are passionate and do something about it. As May said, finding the others, and stuff happens. That's also kind of what appealed to me about seaweed. That's actually like kind of what it does in the ocean ecosystems. And a bunch of the artists that I was hanging around with whilst I was writing this book were just taken by how seaweed functioned in the ocean, and actually kind of using that almost like as a teacher to teach us how to be good humans. Like it's a thing that doesn't predate. As Kristel said, it kind of does no harm. It's like pretty passive. Yet it connects like all of these, it creates ecosystems underwater. It deacidifies the water, does all these crazy things. So not only can we kind of connect in and learn about seaweed, we can potentially use, whether it be algae, plants, animals, as like teachers ourselves to figure out how to be good custodial species. But the big thing for me is, yeah, just the power of community and being a part of a future that has a bit more energy and morale than we'd sometimes, my 5 a.m. mind usually in the morning isn't like super positive. And so, it'd be good just to get a little bit more morale in the classroom.
Well, thank you so much all for this great conversation. I've loved hearing the evolution of the inkling of an idea for this book that's made its way all the way across the world for this school project implementation. And it really is, Kristel, you were saying third graders, and I feel like that was the epitome of my interest, right, in seaweed. If you're fortunate enough to run at a beach and pick up seaweed, right, like that's the key age for where you're starting to get interested in the world around you. So that's really great. So we have a couple questions that have come in from attendees, and please feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat. But this question actually is for Maya, talking about the actual industry of seaweed farming. How do you see the field of seaweed science evolving in future years? And I guess too, like, if you had recommendations for communities in Australia to get involved in this industry, what would you say?
Yeah, sure. So the seaweed industry, I think, is just a really exciting space to be. And I want to mention that Maine seaweed is pretty young right now. So our industry really got going in 2010. But globally, the seaweed industry has been around for much longer than that. And so I think that there's a lot, particularly in Japan and South Korea and China, that we can really look at some of their technology and see how it's gone for them. And we can take some of the things that they've really been successful in and then take our own ways of doing things and incorporate that too. So I really see, at least in our community in Maine, seaweed being a bridge between the economic opportunities for the state and also food security and healthy food for classrooms. I know Kristel mentioned the seaweed coming into the classroom, but it doesn't just need to be for classrooms. So I would say I see the seaweed kind of being a nexus, a connector. There's the working waterfront piece, but there's also, the science piece, and it's a material. You can make plastic with seaweed, you can make biofuels, you can do a lot of different things. And so I think it's really just starting to be something that we're really looking into, and there's a lot of room for growth there. And specifically with other communities and how to kind of connect people and get interested, I think that education really has been key in that. I mean, I grew up in Maine, actually, so went through all of the classrooms that are now having this resource.
Same.
Yeah. And so for me to see how this is being used is so exciting. And, I grew up here and I love it. And I wanted to come back to work on seaweed stuff. And I think that that's a really important way to connect with community and also to reach people and kind of say, hey, like, I do a lot of education and communication work, but other people are doing science, other people want to make art, other people want to do marketing. So that's pretty awesome.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, I'm a fellow Mainer, but unfortunately didn't get into the field of seaweed, but at least now I'm learning more about it myself. And this book was definitely a help in that way. Speaking of continuing to learn, Bailey, I feel like I'm always learning from you and Todd in your work. Can you share any recent success stories about the seaweed farming partners you've worked with, I guess, outside of this successful partnership?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a couple, as Maya said, it's a newer industry in places like North America and Europe where we really focus on seeing it grow. And so things are moving fast. And a couple of the success stories I think that come to mind. One is just the real tangible economic benefits it's starting to have for communities. I think it was last year that in Maine, some of the fishermen, most of the folks who are farming seaweed in Maine are lobstermen who are looking for an additional livelihood to supplement their income. And we saw that some of the lobstermen were actually making more money farming seaweed than they did from lobster that year, as lobstering, you know, continues to have challenges with climate and costs of fuel and bait and things like that. So it's becoming a really important component for folks on our shores. We've also seen some really great work happening in British Columbia, where there's been some really meaningful partnerships between First Nations groups and seaweed farms that are starting to get off the ground, and a lot of excitement happening there. There's now, I think, 8 or 9 seaweed farms around Vancouver Island that are all in partnership with First Nations communities, and seeing those benefits and all of that permeate through the communities there. And then on the market side, you know, Maya said you can use this for so many things. We recently saw the company that we work with, the first seaweed-based ink, come onto the market, which is, you know, something I don't think a lot about, but is actually, there's a lot of chemicals and petroleum that goes into making ink that we use every day, and to have whatever's printed on our packaging and things like that be from seaweed is something that's degradable and not as harmful as, you know, a small win, but can be pretty exciting when you scale it across geographies. So.
Well, thank you for sharing those. And I encourage folks too to check out World Wildlife's website, worldwildlife.org, that has a bunch more stories about successful endeavors like this. And thank you, Vivian, for your question. And maybe all of our panelists could pop something in the chat, and we can also share. So everyone who's on here today will get a link following this session with a link off to additional resources. But Vivian asked, do you recommend any other educational tools? So documentaries, other books, podcasts even, and resources to learn more about seaweed? That's such a great question. So I don't know if anyone wants to chime in or throw your thoughts in the chat. And we can also, again, compile additional resources for our follow-up note as well.
Yeah, I would just say that the you know, the Innovation Center, like Maya's put together so many amazing resources, and when you pair that with Matt's book, it's you know, there are so many videos that the Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center has put together, so many great lessons. I think once you get into that, you know, that's a really good starting off point. It really starts kind of like ground level. And I'm older than a third grader, let's just say that. And I remember too going to the beach even as, you know, early as 2 years ago and thinking, oh my gosh, the seaweed is so annoying. I just wish they would rake it away and be done with it. And now I have this amazing appreciation for it. So, you know, just starting earlier. So I don't think it's my point is that the materials that the Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center has put together are appropriate for any age level. So if you want to learn more, that's a great place to start. And then, you know, I think it will just grow. Maya, I'm going to kind of pass it over to you since.
Yeah, thanks for the shout out. Like Kristel mentioned, we do have a lot on the website that I just put into the chat, which is the Kelp curriculum. It says 5th and 6th grade at the top. We've had people with kindergartners all the way through high school using it. So, you know, there's a little flexibility there. I would also recommend, if you reach out to me directly with kind of specific topic areas, because there really is so much out there, and we're kind of we've been lucky to be able to continue this work. So we're going to be adding to it. And I have a lot of resources that are more specific to certain areas. So you're really interested in the evolution of seaweed or in producing plastic or something, I may be able to help you find specific resources along those lines. So
thank you so much for that.
Yeah, Jen, I'll just add 2 links to the chat as well for folks.
Great.
WWF recently launched a series called Portrait of a Seaweed Farmer. So there's 3 videos that are each about 10 minutes long and show kind of help you get to know a seaweed farmer and who are the people doing this, as far as from Norway to British Columbia to Alaska. So those are really great. And then there's also a website I recently learned about at a seaweed conference that is similarly gorgeous in the way Matt Matt's book's illustrations are, that really digs into bull kelp, which is a really important kelp species out on the west coast of the US. But it's a great tool that kind of talks through a lot of aspects of the science and the culture as well, for an interactive web-based resource.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much for that, Bailey. Yeah, so important to highlight the people behind the seaweed. And Matt, thanks for your recommendation as well on the film. So for our last question, and Maya, you mentioned this, which is so true. There are so many different topics related to seaweed that we could get into. And today we've been sort of geeking out on the science and the education piece. But the one thing that I feel like everyone can get behind is food, right? It's a delicious food. There's a page in your book, Matt, that highlights all of the different ways that seaweed is consumed in countries of the world. So as a parting answer, I'd love to hear from all of you. Do you eat foods that weave in seaweed? Not? And if so, I'd love to know what you eat. Like, do you eat the seaweedish meatballs, Kristel? What are your favorite seaweed foods?
So I will say that Atlantic Sea Farms is a company in Maine that has been super generous in terms of any time I've ever wanted to be able to give my students samples, they step up to the plate and they do it every single time. And one of my favorite, I do love the seaweedish meatballs. They are amazing. Those do not come from that company, but from Atlantic Sea Farms is their kelp crunch. And if you like kind of like the old school sweet sesame honey sticks, oh my goodness, the kelp crunch is amazing. And I also use their seaweed powder in smoothies. Their seaweed has a reputation for being a superfood. And since I've been, consuming it, I feel like I'm doing better things for my body and for the environment. So that's a good thing. It's a win-win.
Love that, Maya.
Yeah, sure. So the seaweedish meatballs, just gonna say Chef Andrew, every time I'm at an event, like saves them for me because he knows that I'm coming for them. And so he has like a Maya stash and he's like, I see you. But other than that, Maine Coast Sea Vegetables is actually a wild harvest company in Maine that does a lot of really really awesome products. And I really like using some of their sea seasonings and some of their products in just as like energy bars, and also just, sprinkle it in your food. You can have some seaweed in your tacos, why not? So that's what I would say.
Matt?
Well, I mean, like pulling back a bit, like let's not forget that the umami, like the fifth taste, which I think was kind of like discovered by the Japanese biochemist in the early 1900s, comes from kombu dashi. Like it is a whole flavor profile in and of itself, like the savory. So, that's basically how I use it in kind of broths and stuff like that. But it provides an entirely new and unique flavor profile to dishes. That is crazy that is linked, not specifically to seaweed, but it's fundamentally known for umami. But I mean, day to day, I usually use it in like a seasoning. There's a few, I said that the seaweed industry in Australia doesn't really exist. It obviously exists. It's just a very small and embryonic, but there are a few local businesses down in Victoria. I've just learned of some seaweed farmers that are foraging for wakame on the beach and are also farming some kelp. So you can kind of get some seaweed products, but usually for me, it's just seasonings with salt. And I agree with Matt, you can basically put it on anything. I put it on my eggs in the morning. So yeah, I just throw it on everything.
Yeah, there's a company called Barnacle up in Alaska that makes a seaweed hot sauce that I use at least once a day on everything. It is addictive. But yeah, I've been trying to cook more with seaweed as well, and putting it in soups. And I've gotten my partner he makes a smoothie every couple of days, and he's been throwing it in there and loving it. So there's a lot of ways to sneak it in.
Well, hopefully we've gotten everyone either excited for breakfast if you're Matt or dinner if you're on the East Coast. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you for being here today to have this great chat about seaweed. I'm so excited to continue the discussion that's been happening in the chat, to sharing and connecting resources for everybody. So thank you. And again, if you had people who weren't able to join, we'll be posting this to World Wildlife Fund's YouTube page. And yeah, and look forward to seeing you on a future Pandas and Prose. But thank you again, everybody. It's been a delight. All right, take care. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.